What makes an artist an artist? Is it what's in their head, the ideas, the concepts, or is it what they make, physically create? And the reason why I ask that, and it's a very controversial subject, is we are actually just outside of Paris, well, still within Paris, at the Rodin Museum. But the reason why I ask is because he hardly ever picked up the hammer and chisel, which seems so strange. He actually would pose with them sometimes in photographs, but that's not really who he was. He was the idea guy. He would come up with the ideas, and he had a team that would actually sculpt his ideas out. So I asked the question, is it his artwork? Which is one of the most controversial things that probably surrounds him, but don't judge yet, because I know several artists who do the exact same thing. So we're gonna go around and see some of his work, and of course we're gonna get to experience the thinker, and I can't wait to give you the background on that. And I want you to better understand his technique, and hopefully walk away with a lot more respect, but maybe some other questions. Let's start working around the museum in these beautiful gardens. François Auguste Rodin was born on November 12, 1840 into a working-class family in Paris. Rodin was largely self-educated and began to draw at age 10. Between ages 14 and 17, he attended the Petite École, a school specializing in art and mathematics, where he studied drawing and painting. In 1857, Rodin submitted a clay model of a friend to the École des Beaux-Arts, hoping to be admitted. He was not. He applied 2 more times and was still rejected. This was probably because the judges loved neoclassical sculpture, and Rodin was schooled in modern sculpture at the time. He left the Petite École in 1857 and spent 20 years working as a decorative craftsman, absorbing lessons from classical sculpture while developing his own expressive style. But a quick trip to Italy is about to change everything. He got inspired. He knew he loved Michelangelo, but until he actually saw Michelangelo's work in La Pieta, all of a sudden he was pumped. And what I loved about the inspiration that he said, and you can see it even in this work right here, he said Michelangelo kind of inspired him to get out of making mundane sculptures. And he said all of a sudden he loved and appreciated the way Michelangelo could make a sculpture actually look like it's breathing. He could then make the human body just simple, and just those simple movements, it didn't have to be complex, made his sculptures unique. So from then on, all of a sudden his work sort of exploded, and he became really, really well known. Because of that trip to Italy, all of a sudden he's inspired. But let's keep moving around. I want to show you a few more sculptures and also give you a little bit more of a glimpse into his approach, which is pretty unique. So finally, Rodin puts one of his artworks up for exhibit in the Paris Salon. They accept it and they put it in there. And it's a sculpture of a male, it's called a simple male sculpture. Here's the problem, it's exactly the proportions perfectly of just a human body. It just looks normal. And everyone thinks he cheated. They think he just, I don't know how, but in some way, because it's not even, it just looks plain and simple, they don't even think he really sculpted it, they don't like it, and it creates this huge controversy, which actually just makes his name bigger. I mean, right, that's how it works anyway, even today. So after that, he didn't want that to ever happen again, so that's why we're here taking a look at this. So he decided he would make all his sculptures huge. They would always be bigger than life, and he would make certain elements of the human body way bigger in proportions so that you knew he did not fake it. So if you see, I mean, check out these hands. These hands are enormous, and he's bigger than life. His head is a little small, probably considering all the other elements of his body, and by far his feet look enormous. If you're wondering why many of his sculptures look a little weird in that way, that's because he wanted them to, so that when he exhibited them, nobody had anything. There was no reason to complain. There was no reason to think he did not do the work himself, because they were oversized. I want to point this out to you because it's going to be relevant in just a minute. So again, signed the work, right? And then it's numbered. So it's not the first one, it may not be the only one. That's gonna become really relevant in just a minute as we work our way around the museum. Follow me. One of the things I actually love about Rodin is that he would do a lot of his sculpting, once he had a team, he would do it in clay. So he would actually make the models out of clay. And the coolest part is, in my opinion, if you go and see those clay models, you can still see his fingerprints in the clay, which I think is cooler than the hammer and chisel Anyway, but one thing he did do as well, and I wanted to show you this, just like Michelangelo, right? He's super inspired, he's borrowing his inspiration. He would leave a lot of his works half finished. He would start them, or maybe just like have his team start and he would move on, but you can kind of even see here as an example compared to some of the other works even in this garden, and especially we're gonna see in a minute, like the feet aren't finished, the arms, the body, it looks very just half done. And he wanted you to see that and kind of just be like, you know what, you get the idea. You know where I was going with it, but you know, I don't need to finish it. So it's just interesting that he does the same thing that Michelangelo and many other artists were known for. And it was frustrating they wouldn't finish, but you know, it's kind of like the mark of genius, I guess. Okay, so this is what we're here for, right? Check this out, check this out. Ta-da! There it is. Okay, so question, we have the thinker, absolutely beautiful, masterful sculpture. Is this the one, or is it just one of many? Which is a great question, and don't feel bad because not many people understand that there are many versions of this. In fact, there are 25. And get this, only about 10 were sculpted during Rodin's lifetime. So I know it's kind of a letdown, but this is a very, very significant piece of sculpture. Here's the really fascinating thing to me. So this is not the original. There was an original made that was only 70 centimeters tall, and it was in this massive work called The Gates of Hell that Rodin was working on. And he had put right in the middle of this massive sculpture a little tiny figure, and it was to represent Dante from the Divine Comedy. And he made this, and guess where he got his inspiration from? Yeah, Michelangelo. If you're in the Sistine Chapel and you look on the back wall, you see the Judgment Day scene. And right in the middle, there is a figure. And if you look, there's some similarities to the way the figure looks, the arms and the shoulders presiding over Judgment Day. That is exactly where he got inspired. So, yes, it is not the original, but it is still pretty significant. And this is one of the very few that it was originally down in the center of Paris, and they moved it here to the museum, which is awesome. Now, I love this sculpture, and part of what I actually love about it too is it just doesn't make sense sometimes. I want to show you something mainly about the way he's positioned and how he's seated, which is pretty fascinating. Let's go check it out. All right, so I wanted to show you something. Check out the way the figure itself, the sculpture, is positioned. You don't really recognize it at first when you see it because it looks like he's just, in his train of thought, but it's a very awkward position, so check it out. Feet are kind of propped up, back elongated. Again, just like we were talking about, Rodin made it bigger than life and a little awkward, so you knew he wasn't working, it wasn't meant to be realistic. But elbow, right elbow is positioned on the left knee, which is awkward already. And then he's got the hand on the knee, and then instead of doing one of these, which is how most of us would sit and think, he's doing one of these, which is really awkward. So again, he twists the whole body like Michelangelo would just to challenge himself, and then makes the whole sculpture feel a little awkward. And not only that, but it kind of makes you think, why? Like, what was his reasoning for doing it? Which I'm not really sure, but I kind of love it. But again, you should try this out because it is not a comfortable position that you're gonna sit and think in. This is not so much this. Today, the question is it art? I mean, it's a difficult question to answer, especially with artists like Rodin, who they're making their own artwork, but they also have a team. So the question is, right, is it art if it comes from your head, the idea, the concept, the passion, or does it have to be made by your hands? And don't get me wrong, he's not the only artist. You gotta remember, people like Andy Warhol, they were as much an entrepreneur as they were an artist. And as controversial as they are, just like Rodin and the thinker, now that you know there are 25 versions, and some of which were not even made while he's alive, we still love their work. I mean, at the end of the day, you kind of have to respect the idea that he knew how to do it, but he also knew how to make it happen faster and to get his work around the world, which it is. Literally, there are one of these is in Ohio, close to where I'm from. Pretty amazing, but this one here at his museum, it's just awesome to be here and to see it.